It's just a plant that I really can't escape. And, there's so many ways that I use it.
Hello and welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through nature connection. I'm your host, Rosalee de la Forêt. I created this YouTube channel to share trusted herbal wisdom so that you can get the best results when relying on herbs for your health. I love offering up practical knowledge to help you dive deeper into the world of medicinal plants and seasonal living. Each episode of the Herbs with Rosalee podcast is shared on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast app. Transcripts and recipes for each episode can be found at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com or through the link in the video description. Also in the video description, you'll find other helpful resources. For example, to get my best herbal tips, as well as fun bonuses, be sure to sign up for my weekly herbal newsletter. Okay, grab your cup of tea and let's dive in. First up is the Herbs with Rosalee Student Spotlight. Each week, we take a moment to celebrate one of our amazing students and their inspiring contributions to our herbal community. This week, we're shining our spotlight on Leah Barron in Massachusetts, who was in our Rooted Medicine Circle in 2024. Leah created this beautifully illustrated herbal zine all about spruce as her capstone project. In this engaging and educational resource, she dives deep into spruce's identification, ecological importance, and medicinal uses, even including ethical harvesting tips and her own tried and true recipes. One of Leah's biggest takeaways is a newfound appreciation for spruce and its rich history, especially its uses by Native Americans and early settlers, knowledge that can be easily lost if we don't share it. Thanks to Leah's thoughtful work, more people can now see the wonders of this amazing tree. Leah has also generously shared a copy of her zine with the community. Visit the show notes to get your copy. To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending Leah a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Mountain Rose Herbs is my go-to for high-quality organic spices, herbal remedies, and even hard-to-find botanicals. They ship all over the U.S. and have a massive selection of products to fuel your herbal adventures. Thank you, Mountain Rose Herbs, for supporting our amazing students. And if you'd like to explore Mountain Rose Herbs' offerings and support this show, you can find the special link in the show notes. One of the best parts of this podcast, for me, is getting to know herbalists I've never met before. There are so many of us doing amazing work out in the world, and it was just lovely to sit down with KhadiYah to hear about her love of abundant chickweed and her many sharings on African herbalism. For those of you who don't already know her, KhadiYah Preciado is a passionate author, herbal teacher, and mother dedicated to empowering others to reconnect with nature's healing power through African-centered and biblically aligned herbalism. As the founder of Yah's Apothecary, she combines her professional expertise with personal experience to empower others to heal their bodies, nurture their families, and build thriving herbal businesses. When she's not teaching or blending remedies, she homeschools her children, cultivates her herbal garden, and mentors women who want to reclaim their health and their purpose. KhadiYah, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This is my favorite herbal podcast, so this is a dream for me.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I've been anticipating this for a while, and you came highly recommended by Rosemary Gladstar and Mason Hutchison. So that's like two really fabulous introductions to you. And yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you, get to know you better. And I would love to start with your herbal path and all that's brought you on your path to us today.
Yeah. For me, it started pretty much how it starts for a lot of people. I had health struggles for a long time, and modern medicine just didn't have the answers for me. And so I was just looking for an alternative. I actually went on Google and looked up hormone regulating herbs because I had absent periods since the inception of them when I was 13. And I also would get terrible cystic acne whenever my periods would come. I had constipation, but I didn't really even know that constipation was like a big thing. And it's actually funny. I used to always keep prune juice in my fridge because it really was that much of a problem for me. And so I used evening primrose. That's what I found. And it worked for me. But then I noticed that I had to keep using it. It would bring my period, but it didn't have my period stabilized. And so, I looked deeper and I studied deeper. And then I really found out that my issue wasn't necessarily my uterus or what I was thinking. It was something deeper. And so it just, I think herbalism is just so powerful because it connected me to my body. I learned, I was interested in growing plants, but just really getting deeper relationship with them. And so, yeah, I'm just so happy that, I did that Google study because even though it didn't lead me to the right plant, it started the journey for me.
I love that. It can just be that simple of like getting the journey started, and then it's like the plants just pull us in deeper and deeper and deeper, and now here you are. I
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about just kind of that journey of like you learned some things, and then I would love to hear more about all of the offerings that you have in terms of just like how do you practice now as an herbalist?
Yeah. So more about the journey for me. Uh, it started for me, I was born at 30 weeks. And so I had a 50-50 chance, they said, of me surviving. And so I had jaundice. And so I always say that my negative, well, not really negative, but my relationship with my liver started off on a bad foot. And
Mhm.
so that actually was the root of the problems. But I was thinking, just like uterus, maybe I need, raspberry leaf or something like that. And so for me, it was actually looking more at African herbalism, where it talks about organ relationships. And so it led me to understand things like hormonal imbalance. Like that's a big thing. It can be, with the pancreas. A lot of people with PCOS, they see the insulin, 40% get diabetes. And so it can be that, or it can be, the brain is important too. The kidneys is important, the liver is important. So I learned about that relationship of what's really going on, how the organs work and support each other. And then I learned more about like how the herbs can also support me too. So it led me to understand my body more, listen to my body, things like that. And so I think that's just the most powerful thing because a lot of times we look at just the herbs, but herbalism also is about understanding our body, listening to our body, and all those things. And so it really just gets you closer to nature. I mean, it's just so powerful, and I think that everybody should feel that sort of empowerment of knowing how to take care of themselves.
Lovely. Did you, when you were going from learning like particular herbs to learning about African herbalism and seeing the organs and all that wonderful things you said about the interconnection, did you have particular teachers or books or things
Yeah,
that
I
you
did.
turned to?
I'm sorry. Yes, there was a book, African Holistic Health. Actually, he's deceased, and so it's funny because I read his book, but it didn't really click for me. And so it wasn't until I kind of was like, but how does this make sense? So it's more about like, oh, there's certain colors, there's certain organ relationships, and all those things, but it didn't just make sense to me. And I actually forgot everything that I learned. Like I tried to memorize herbs. I forgot everything. I kept restarting and trying to reignite. And so I had to just like close the books and see how it just made sense to me. And so that's what really unlocked it. So it was more of me diving deeper into not just this color is associated with this, but why? Why does it have this color? And so looking deeper at the plants, at a cellular level, and then what's going on in the body, but why is it going on? Because we talk about, herbal actions all the time, but we don't talk about the mechanism of the action, like, how it works. So we talk about anti-inflammatory, but there's different ways that a plant can achieve that. And so it really was, I think so having a mentor is really wonderful, and I think that that's like the best thing. But for me, I found that because I didn't have a mentor, I just had to study and really make things make sense to me. And so that's how I just was able to create my own path, which I think is also really important too.
Oh, that's lovely. So I'm getting a sense of like very experiential herbalism learning
Yes, like
style.
lots of experience. Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
experiments. Yes.
Yeah, I love that because it's kind of like you said, you can read stuff and forget about it, but when you experience it in your body and understand things, like you're saying through different mechanisms, like that's when it can make sense and kind of really stick with us. And
Yeah.
yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Well, for your herb today, you've chosen chickweed, which I'm very
Yeah.
excited about. I still have snow on the ground where I live. I know you probably don't
Wow.
where you are.
No.
You're in Memphis, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. So not as much snow there. I still have snow, but it'll melt quickly. And one of the first herbs that I will see will be chickweed and cleavers, which are in your recipe today. So I'm excited. I'm like all ready for spring, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share about chickweed.
Yeah. And so the hardest, or I would say the most difficult question for any herbalist is to choose one herb.
Yeah.
So I kind of wrestled with, oh, do I talk about chickweed? Do I talk about wild violet? Do I talk about, so there were so many different choices, but I just settled on chickweed because that's the plant that takes over my yard. It's everywhere. And also in the front of my yard as well. And then we also have the, is it called mouse ear chickweed too? That's a little bit kind of furry or hairy and bigger leaves and whatnot. And so it's just a plant that I really can't escape. And, you know, there's so many ways that I use it. We don't have chickens now, but we used to have chickens and they loved it. And even with me harvesting it all the time, like every day, them eating it, I could never get too much of it. And so it allowed me to experiment with chickweed. And I find that for the recipe that I shared, the garden always has everything, you know, that you need. And so I love that it is used for, I use it for myself. I had like a weird like hive come out of nowhere. And so I used it and it really was like cooling and soothing to me. And so I also used it with cleavers. And then I thought, you know, peppermint, because it already is really cooling. I just thought that it just really made a really good blend. And so I just tried it and it was really helpful for me. And so it's just something that I use. It's on me and my children. And I just really love it. It makes a really nice green oil. And it's just so abundant, and it's something that is really accessible to everybody. So hopefully, the viewers, if they're able to identify chickweed, can try it. And even if you don't have, you know, cleavers, just use the chickweed and some peppermint oil, and hopefully you'll find that it is really helpful to you too.
Yeah, that's a good tip on, you know, just using chickweed if you don't have cleavers. Chickweed is so phenomenal for itches, and this is a great recipe. And listeners can download their copy of the recipe at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com, where you can get the whole thing there. And so you work with chickweed for your chickens, for an anti-itch oil. How else do you work with chickweed?
So the only way that I didn't love it is I tried it fresh just to see in a tea, and so it was just like too much water on water. It just did not taste the greatest. But I do love it also in seasonings, and I love to use it fresh in smoothies. I like it because the leaves are just so small, and I feel like it's really mild, and so I can put it and hide it in things. But it's just so nourishing. So I love it for that. And then also I feel like, as I said, the garden really provides everything that you need. And so I have plenty of chickweed because what I struggled with for a long time too, along with the constipation, was swollen lymph nodes. And so I found that it really was helpful to me as a lymphagogue, just helping to get rid of some of that extra moisture. It's really funny because the chickweed, where we live, is very rainy. We get 50% more rain than the US average. And so no matter what, whenever I touch the chickweed, it's always like soaking wet. It's just like holding the drops of water. And it's like, where do you even hold this? The leaves are so tiny. And so I just really feel like it just really helps with regulating the moisture in my body. And I've just seen that and experienced that. And so I really love it. I feel like it's really gentle and to be used often every day, just for, you know, that daily maintenance for myself.
And so when you're using it every day, you're using it mainly as food then? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
understanding?
as food. I
Yeah.
really love it. Yeah, I love it as food. I put it on salads and smoothies, and then also the seasoning blends. Yeah, I like to use herbs every day, and I encourage people, you know, not to just reach for it when something's wrong, but to keep your body feeling right as well every day. Just like we use, like you were talking about, thyme or any of our herbs. They really are, many of them can be utilized a lot more, and that's how we really get stronger relationships with them, by using them in a lot of different ways.
Lovely. Yes, I love chickweed as food. I love to make a pesto with it. That's one of my favorite things. And we'll often, if it really shows up in the garden one year, then I'll make like pints and pints of pesto that then we'll freeze it and then eat it in the
Oh,
winter
okay.
time. And having, again, we have lots of snow here. So we don't get a lot of greens in the winter. And it's just a wonderful way there's something about fresh chickweed that's just so like the flavor is just, it's not like it's an intense aromatic, but there's something that's so fresh and nourishing and yummy about
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I love that. How do
I'm
you
curious. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm curious of how you freeze it. Do you freeze it like in a jar in ice cubes? How do you do that?
I do it as like in pint jars. So I do a lot of freezing. We have a big chest
Oh,
or,
okay.
big freezer. And so yeah, I just put it in like pint jars and freeze it like that.
Oh,
The
wow.
freezing it into ice cubes, I think that's handy if you want to like put a little bit in your like use it to stir
A
fry
small
into a
one.
meal or something, like use a small amount.
Mhm.
But one thing that I've found to be careful with is that those ice cubes can get freezer burn pretty easily. So, needing to like use the special Ziploc bag or use like a vacuum
Yeah.
sealer or something to kind of, because I've done the whole like freeze things into chickweed and then freeze things into ice cube trays and I pull them out of the freezer and there's like got the freezer burn on it, which just
Yeah.
it's not appetizing, doesn't taste great anymore, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
I never thought to, I've made the pesto as well, but I've never thought to freeze it. So thank you for sharing that tip.
Yeah, there's something so special about having chickweed out of season because it's such an in-season plant, really. And I do
Right.
try to just enjoy it as much as I can in season. But when we have a big, as you said, chickweed can be such a bumper crop when it grows. So when there's an
Yeah.
abundance, want to keep using it. You keep mentioning the seasoning blends. I feel like I want to ask about that. I'm curious what your seasoning blend looks like.
Yeah, so it does have some of the classic like thyme, oregano, but I also have like nettle in it. I'll have chickweed. So I have like some more nourishment a little bit. Could also have like moringa in there. So I kind of change it up. I like to have some kelp in there for the little salty flavor. And then I also do add like a little Himalayan sea salt as well.
Sounds yummy. Let's see what else is on my mind. Oh, you had mentioned like if people can identify it. Do you have any identification tips for chickweed if folks are
Yeah.
wondering?
Actually, a friend, she let me know like the stems. If you bend it really gently and you pull it apart, there's like a white kind of like little fiber, like a string almost
Mm.
in it. So that's one of the ways that you can identify chickweed. That's the only, I guess, kind of cool little trick or hack that I know about it. But I feel like it is kind of it doesn't look like a lot of things. And I just noticed that it's very easy to harvest. Like the roots are very thin and small and very low laying on the ground and just spreads out in like all different directions. That's just what I
Hmm.
noticed and how it looks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I often use scissors to harvest the chickweed because then the roots can stay in
Oh,
the ground and can keep
yeah.
growing. But also it's like then they don't, it's like when you pull up the roots, all the dirt and stuff comes up with it. And so sometimes I can
Yeah.
just go through and snip and then they're not that dirty or whatever. You can just use them as is.
Yeah.
I know you have
Yeah,
littles. Do they
me,
help
I have
you?
way too much. Yes, they love to help me with everything. Actually, we have so much chickweed; it's just like an understatement. And so she'll help me. She'll just rake. We were just raking whenever we are trying to have a new crop grow. Chickweed is all over the beds; it grows all around the plant. So we just use a rake, and actually, that's how we get it because
Mm.
yeah, we have way too much, way too
Yeah.
much. It's just yeah, and it just really likes our backyard because it is really rainy. It really does
Mhm.
like that environment. So we'll never be without chickweed.
Nice. I always think that when the chickweed, grows in the garden and stuff, it must be such like a good like a nice way to nourish the soil in between crops and stuff, it's like just adding back to the soil. And so when I see chickweed in the gardens, I always think like, oh, that's good soil. Oh, that's a good garden. I know, if people don't love chickweed, they might not love that it's in their garden, but I always just think that's a really good thing to have all that chickweed.
Yeah, and I love it because I don't have to plant a cover crop because that's
Right.
what's naturally is going to happen with the chickweed. So that's a wonderful thing, and it is like we talked about, really easy to harvest. So that makes it a lot easier than some other plants. So I don't mind it. like I said, I really find that when we first moved here, I didn't think we had any cleavers. And then a year when I really had a need for it, it just revealed itself to me. And so I just really feel like if there ever is a time where I don't need that much chickweed, then maybe something else will come and take up, its place. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you grow other herbs
Yes,
intentionally
I
or not?
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we have just a small suburban backyard, a little bit less than a fourth acre, but we do grow quite a bit. I do like to grow lots of herbs, some oregano. I have like 4 or 5 different mints that I really adore. Love to grow like raspberry leaf. They do really well. I'm trying to think of other things. I have lots of yarrow everywhere. That's one of my favorites. Another one, but that I thought about, I went through the whole list. I'm trying to think what else. What catnip? There's a lot of different herbs. I do love to grow herbs. Chamomile, lavender. That's all I can think of right now. But yes, I do love to grow herbs.
KhadiYah, I can really tell that you're an herbalist because you said you grow raspberry leaf. Like most people grow raspberries. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, I'm there for the
Right.
leaf. Like, oh yeah, it has this like really delicious fruit that also goes on it, but like I'm here for the leaf.
Yeah, I was just talking to my mom. I told her, the leaves are actually have more antioxidants than the fruit. And I have like a little method. I always try to, I try to make, like I say, like a matchbook or like a deck of cards. I always go out there and just get that much, just so I can make sure that I always have enough because it's one of my favorite herbs. But yeah, I didn't even realize I had it until you said that.
Yeah, it's just like the I just makes me think of like, tell me you're an herbalist without saying you're an herbalist. And saying I grow raspberry leaf would definitely qualify on that.
Yeah, and also too, because my children, they really are just comfortable going out and getting any food. So I really don't get any raspberries. They go out and eat
Oh,
all of them. So that's probably
see.
why too. So I have to get something out of it.
Right, right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I got off topic of chickweed, but is there anything else you'd like to share about chickweed?
I did want to share one of the things that I read about chickweed, because I'm always looking at like, why are the plants the way they are? So why is it kind of moistening? Why does it have that texture? And so one of the reasons is the saponins that it has. And I actually found a study that showed like the saponins, again, kind of with the water, just the same way like a plant like, I don't know, licorice or so, that is moistening, which might not be the best when you have congestion. But, just like water, it kind of softens things and helps it to move. And I noticed chickweed does that like as a lymphagogue, even though it still is moistening. And I've also saw that that was beneficial for things like tumors. And so someone actually had, they thought it was a cyst, but they later came back and did a scan and said that it was breast cancer, a lump. But I did a blend and it had chickweed in it. I had wild violet, one that's really popular. But I like to have other things that are like lymphagogues and all these different things and kind of target it. And they actually saw a reduction. And so some of the herbs that I really feel like the herbs that are in such abundance can really be helpful, but we usually overlook them because they're just not as, I guess, cool or something. So I did just want to share that to, the dandelions, all those things. Those are some of the most powerful remedies. And chickweed also, I call it actually that chick stella, with stellaria and just the chickweed. I know. But I just wanted to share that. Maybe that might be helpful to someone if they're trying to make a blend. That might be an herb that might be useful, and it might be even more beneficial to look into saponins and see if that might be something helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And you're so right. It's these common herbs that often can be so powerful for us and convenient. And, we can have a connection with them and we can work with them in all these different ways. Like you've shared everything from like feeding your chickens to seasonal blends to salads to anti-itch oil and on and on. I mean, there's just something that's really precious and amazing about being able to have that relationship with a plant that grows so bountifully for you as well. That's just, I
Yeah,
think, herbal medicine at its best.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I would also love to talk about your book, Herbal Holistic Healing. Can you tell us about that? Tell us about the inspiration and tell us what readers can find in there.
Yes. So it's herbalistic healing, African herbalism for modern times. And so, like I shared, I was introduced into African herbalism and I read about it. But I didn't really like understand other than like, I guess this and that, or the formula was already there, but I didn't understand why those pieces were there. And so it's pretty much like my journey with the plants. I start off by sharing my story and just things that I notice in the world. And so it's not really a kind of read through book, but I'm more of like, I get inspiration, I share little bits, but it is about reconnecting some of those ancestral practices. So the way that we learn with intuition, with observation, and also just sharing how we can connect that to the more sciencey, the phytochemistry, the anatomy, and all those different things. And I wanted it to be kind of like a book on everyone's coffee table. So it's something to like a conversation starter for the beginner to even the advanced. So something that kind of a resource that grows with you. But I really wanted to share what African herbalism is because it's something that's not talked about and just, really share about, how it has maybe some missing pieces that are really important in our practice.
Well, thank you. I got to look through it and I really enjoyed looking through it. And like you said, there's not a ton of information available about African herbalism. Although
Yeah.
I know that it greatly influences lots of herbal traditions, so I was really happy to read the book, and yeah, it's available on your website. We'll put that in the notes so folks can find it, and yeah, and that's actually was my introduction to you because Rosemary Gladstar wrote me and said, "This is such an amazing book. I know you're going to love it, and you definitely need to have KhadiYah on your show." And that was an easy one, took a look at the book and it was an easy, like, yeah, let's get this started. So, yeah, thank you for your
Thank
work
you.
on that. Absolutely. Thank you. Well, I'd love to hear about what herbal projects and things you have going on. I know you have a practitioner database, for example. I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, like I shared my story, I feel like there is such a need to learn more about the body, what's going on, why it's happening, and then also connecting that to the plant. So understanding the plants really deeply, understanding our bodies really deeply, and like how to put that together because it really is just like a collaboration. And so when I first had the idea, I actually thought like, oh, that'd be too time consuming, that'd be really difficult, but that's a really good idea. And it just kept showing up for me. And so now I'm really happy because there's a focus on the different organ systems and the different organs and looking more about the functions and so, lesser known facts. And so you can dive really deeper. And I feel like that's really what we should look at first when especially you're trying to come and you're like, I have a problem that I really want solved. We really do have to look at our bodies first and kind of dig really deep. For me, it was digging deep all the way to my birth. And then just connecting, learning the plants really deeply. So just really, detailed monographs and then learning more about like the diseases and some statistics and what does research say, what data says, some of the clinical trials. So it was just a place to kind of put all of those things in there. So whenever someone maybe has a problem and they maybe need a little help on maybe making a formula or something to kind of have a collection of a database for where you can go and seek a little bit more understanding on different things.
Mm-hmm. So is this mainly for practitioners then, or just people wanting
Yeah,
like everyday health
yeah.
or?
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut off for a little bit. I'm sorry. Can you say the last part again?
I think I was just mainly asking if it's for practitioners.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was thinking more of the practitioner or people who, many of us, we kind of just wake up one day and we just find out like we're the go-to, like, whenever someone figures out like you're herbalist, they have questions for you and anybody else has a problem, they start coming to you. So you just kind of wake up a lot of times and you just like, oh, I'm a community herbalist now or whatever. So I have made it, yeah, towards that person who has a lot of people coming to them and they just want to have really good answers, that are by data and those kind of things.
Oh, wonderful. And so will you walk me through it? Like someone could log into the database and then like look up, I don't know, like what would they do once they're there?
Yeah. So you can, like, let's say you have a problem with your liver. So you can go in and look up your liver, and then you can go up. There's different herbs or different things that and study. So then you can look deeper into the different herbs. And if you have maybe been diagnosed with something, you can look at, a protocol. So some lifestyle changes that might be helpful, some foods, the best foods. And so it's just a place where you can go and study. So maybe if you are interested in learning about different organs, you can take, and some people will do that once a month, just really try to go deep into something specific. But then also when you have struggles, you can go in there and there's, recipes or different things like that to help you along the way as well.
Oh, cool. Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And we'll put all the in the show notes links to where they can find more from you, KhadiYah, as well as the database. So thank you for that.
Thank you for
And
letting me share.
yeah, absolutely. And before you go, I have one last question for you. And that question is, what do you wish you'd known when you first started working with herbs?
Uh, what I wish I known, there's a lot of things that I wish I knew. But the biggest thing I'd say is that herbalism really is personal. And one of the things, the way that we learn in traditional school, I think is really different than the way that we learn about plants. Um, I always say, like, there isn't necessarily always right or wrong, or it's not always 1 + 1 = 2. It's really customized. And so that was a huge thing for me. But also learning to just listen to your intuition. With experimenting, I just learned to kind of trust myself. And I think we have to go back more to that. And we all the books, all the blogs, all the things are wonderful, but we have to know how it connects or how it actually works for us, because sometimes we might read all the things, and when we go to apply it, we might find, so I think it's all about just finding yourself, understanding yourself, and really listening to the plants too. And I think that's just the best way to learn. So don't always approach, with, I say, rigid thinking, but really just like a child, be really experiment, be really curious, ask questions. Like children always say, why, why? I kind of always do that to go deeper. And I think that that's really important for us as herbalists to really grow in our knowledge.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, sometimes I feel maybe I'm just speaking of me, but sometimes when we're learning, it's easy to go into our comfort zones. And so I kind of grew up in a school system that taught me to like read and memorize and then spit it out on a test.
Yeah,
And I will say, I really agree with what you're saying. It's a great thing to be reflecting on. Like, I wish, what I wish I'd known in the beginning is that, yeah, that experimentation and to not be afraid to try the teas and try the oils and see how things feel for you. So you can move beyond just hearing, like what you said, like what the books say and understanding how it
right.
feels for you. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think it's so important because we really I remember, at least for myself, feeling like I don't want to raise my hand or I don't want to give an answer if it's not going to be right. And so I just really think it's just all about just like relearning and just thinking about how you would naturally learn if we weren't put in that environment. Thinking about how babies learn. They learn by observation. We really have to use all of our senses, all of those different things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show, KhadiYah. Thanks for sharing with us. Thanks for your recipe and for all these pearls of wisdom that you shared with us as well.
And thank you so much for being a gracious host to me.
Ah, pleasure. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to head over to the show notes at herbswithrosaleepodcast.com to download your beautifully illustrated recipe card. There, you'll also be able to sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is the best way to stay in touch with me. You can find more about KhadiYah at her website, yazzapothecary.com/start here. If you'd like more herbal episodes to come your way, then one of the best ways to support this podcast is by subscribing on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I deeply believe that this world needs more herbalists and plant-centered folks, and I'm so glad that you're here as part of this herbal community. Also, a big round of thanks to the people all over the world who make this podcast happen week to week. Emily Thomas Anderson is the project manager who oversees the entire podcast operation, from guest outreach to writing show notes and on and on. I often tell people, I just show up. Emily does most of the heavy lifting. Nicole Paul is the operator for the entire Herbs with Rosalee school and community. She keeps an eagle-eye view on everything to ensure it's running smoothly. Francesca is our fabulous video and audio editor. She not only makes listening more pleasant, she also adds beauty to the YouTube videos with plant images and video overlays. Tatiana Rusakova is the botanical illustrator who creates gorgeous plant and recipe illustrations for us. I love them, and I know you love them. Once the illustration is ready, Jenny creates the recipe cards as well as the thumbnail images for YouTube. Alex is our behind-the-scenes tech support and social media manager, and Karen and Emily are our student services coordinators and community support. If you've written in with a question, undoubtedly you got help from them. For those of you who like to read along, Jennifer is who creates the transcripts each week. Xavier, my handsome French husband, is the cameraman and website IT guy. It takes an herbal village to make it all happen, including you. Thank you so much for your support through your comments, reviews, and ratings. One of my favorite things about this podcast is hearing from you. I read every comment that comes in, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts about chickweed. Okay, you've lasted to the very end of the show, which means you get a gold star and this herbal tidbit. Well, KhadiYah and I definitely share a love for chickweed. I especially love how abundant it can really be. I live in a dry desert now, so it doesn't grow as readily, but one of my favorite things when I'm visiting Europe in the springtime is seeing all the places it grows, from sidewalk cracks to abandoned lots and gardens. I also love to eat chickweed, even as a simple salad. Like KhadiYah said, it's high in saponins, which can upset some sensitive bellies, so it's always a good idea to start with just a bit and then increase slowly to make sure your tummy can handle it. I also love chickweed flowers. They're so simple but so beautiful. Each flower has 5 petals that are highly divided, making it look like 10 petals. The flowers are often thought of as star-like. In fact, the genus name is Stellaria, and we always name one of our chickens Stellaria because, like KhadiYah said, chickens love chickweed. Well, thank you for joining me on this herbal adventure. See you next time.